Evening, folks. It's Lee Swanner here, Fundamentals Bass Fishing. I appreciate you stopping by and taking your time to listen to what I've got to say about bass fishing, my own experiences, my own knowledge, and what I've learned over the course of my life, over 40 plus years of bass fishing. And I do, again, I appreciate you stopping by and listening to me. I want to talk today. We've talked a good bit about some better basic steps of starting to bass fishing and how to get rolling, and tying knots and real simple baits, steady retrieve type baits. But you really we've got to step it up a little bit, and we're going to tackle something that you have got to learn, and you've got to learn, and you've got to master it. You have to, because it will produce you more fish in more situations than any other bait that there is. And I'm telling you, this is a purple worm, or a worm. Okay. These days, it's a Senko. The Senko worm is by far, just out by a country mile, the best bass bait that you can ever possibly use. And I use just a 5-inch, just a 5-inch pumpkin or watermelon or green seed. Or it doesn't even have to have a flake in it, or a black one. They just produce. They look like a worm. I didn't even open that, but anyway, this is a Strike King variety here. It's a 5-inch, it's a steady worm, and it's fat, it's heavy. You can cast it a long ways. You can cast it without a weight, in fact, and that's one of the details we'll talk about in a minute. But the Senko worm, you've got to have one on your rod. It's an awesome backup. You miss a fish on top water, you grab that Senko, you throw it right there where that strike was. You're gonna get a second chance. You throw the top water back in, you're not gonna get a second chance. That's a fact, unless they are really on. So, but we talked a little bit about. I did briefly talk about the Texas rig and the worm, and that you've got to know how to do that. Obviously, you got your bullet weight that slides on the line. Lighter is better most cases, depending on the wind and some other factors, but not really super important right now. It's just knowing how to do it. So you got your bullet weight, got your knot, you got your what I use, EWG hook, a Gamakatsu hook, and I can't reiterate that enough. Sharpen your hooks. I missed a fish today, several fish today, because my hook wasn't sharp. They're sharp, but you really have to give them that edge, and it's going to make a big difference for you. I promise you that. If you believe anything that I tell you, you need to believe that, because it's true. Sharpening that hook is going to make a big difference. So you're going to rig that worm weedless. You put a quarter-inch or so on the hook and run it up the shank and turn it around and stick the hook back in the body. That's Texas rig. One way that I didn't even know if this was a standard way of doing it, or if there were other people doing this. But when I lived in South Florida, I used to fish a lot of lakes that had grass that was growing up from the bottom of the lake or from the bottom of the pond, but weren't at the surface yet. So you'd have a couple of feet of clean water on the surface and grass below it. And I used to take a worm, I'd rig it on a worm hook, but with no weight, and then I put a split shot, just a little split shot, enough to get through the wind and get it out there. And what I would do is I'd work that worm, I'd let it sink just a little bit right over the top of that grass, and I'd work it over the top of that grass, and I'm going to tell you, they come up out of that grass and knock the fire out of it. And it worked. I used to do it on Okeechobee too. It is a great way to do it. And obviously, you don't want to get so far that you've got this, it's difficult to cast, and you can use a spinning rod, makes it a little bit easier, because it's kind of light. You can double up split shots, or use a bigger split shot. But it's a great way to do it. It's a great way to. I fish with it like that all the time. Really, it lends itself with a spin cast. Spinning rod is a lot better with doing it that method, because it's a lot lighter, and so the bait casting tend to backlash a little bit with it. But it works, and so you're just kind of popping it over that grass. So you're not just cranking it in, but you throw it out there, let it sink just a hair, and then just kind of pop it, and then reel down your slack. Always keeping that tension on your line. You never want slack in your line. I've talked about this before, but I always reiterate it. You cannot have slack in your line. You never want slack in your line. You got to be able to feel the fish, because doing this, fishing with a worm, it's not like fishing with that spinner bait or fishing with a crankbait or a top water for that matter. You don't see it, you don't feel it. If you have slack in your line, you're gonna miss it. If you've got a bow in your line, you might see a little click in the line, but really you've got to have tension on your line all the time. That way you can feel it. Because when they hit it, and this is just go ahead and cut into this right now. So you're always going to have your rod tip up. So at 45 degrees, basically. So your line's going to be not coming off your rod at 90, essentially, going down into the water. A little bit less the farther out you are, obviously. Maybe you can adjust by pulling your rod tip up a little bit more. But you want that rod tip up. So that's where you have the most sensitivity. So you're going to hit it, they'll hit it, and you're going to feel it, tunk, and you're going to reel straight down on it, just like that, and lay into them. Don't wait. So 2-3 seconds max. You don't want to go any farther than that because, obviously you don't want to have to work a hook out of a bass's gut. And most people don't take a lot of bass anymore, so you don't want to damage, you don't want to kill them. We're all about conservation. I am. I don't keep bass. I love to catch them, and bigger the better. And especially if I catch a big one, I don't ever keep it. No doubt about that. So, but set down on them real quick, and lay into them hard, and get them up out of the grass, get them up out of the weeds, whatever. But that's the key on that, is no slacking line. In this method, the Texas rig, that's how you do it. And look, it produces all the time, and you have to. It takes a little. Once you catch that first fish or get that first hit, and you set the hook, and you hang him, it's going to change your ideas about. And we're going to talk about jig fishing next. But this worm fishing, you've got to get on it, and you've got to master it, because it is absolutely vital to being successful as bass fishermen. And those Senkos, work with whatever colors, but I stay darker, lighter weights, because unless you're fishing 20 feet of water, obviously you want a little bit more weight. But I don't go more than 1/8 or at the most a 1/4 ounce or whatever. No more than a 1/4 ounce. I don't have a situation where I need it. In fact, most of the time, I don't use the lead. I really don't. But it's weedless. It gets through Texas rigging, or even this way. As long as that hook's embedded back into the worm, you're not going to have a lot of problems. And the key is not if you feel an obstruction in the water, don't try to yank it out of there, man. Just kind of work it through there, because I'm telling you, bass slow down. You want to slow down when you do this. I mean, because it really makes a difference. That slower is better, and also it's going to maintain the life of your worm. They're pretty expensive. Basically 75 cents or $1 a piece. So, and I should tell you now that you can, if you use that Senko and it gets damaged, you can turn the thing around, pop the end off of it, and use it backwards. I caught that bass today on one that's backwards. So, but work it slow and easy through any obstructions. If you get caught in like a hydrilla or any other type of moss in the water, so you pull it up to it, I just kind of pop it through that, and it'll punch that lead through there. And that's one of the things. The lead seems to kind of if you don't peg your lead, it kind of gets hung up in the weed. It's going to get a little moss on it anyway, but you just pop it right through there and then get it right on into the next open spot. So it falls down, let it sit, and pull it up off the bottom. And so you're going to get in the habit of speeding up, but you're going to consciously try to slow yourself down. And so, it's the number one bait. It always works. It worked for me today. I've been knocking them out on those Senkos. I have been knocking them out. I caught it 8 pounds in March down the road here. 8 pounds of solid 8 pounds, beautiful fish, Senko. Black Senko or a watermelon Senko. Caught that today on probably 6 pounds in it. Really, this year's been phenomenal in terms of quality fish, and I'm catching them in these damn retention ponds. It is blowing my mind, and I don't guess anybody does it here, but I'm hitting them down the highway. If I can get in that fence, I'm hitting it. And some of them you don't catch any fish, but I'm gonna tell you something. They are in every one of them, whether you catch one or not. There's fish there. I promise you there are. Go back and do it again. I've done it and hit them. And so I appreciate it. We're going to talk a little bit more about worm fishing and a little bit more about jig fishing on the next video. And I appreciate you tuning in. And man, if you've gotten this far with me, why don't you subscribe to the channel? Make a comment, comment below, or maybe some of your experiences with worm fishing, or anything you want to say. I appreciate it. It helps me out, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about what you'd like to hear from it. So I appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.